My name is Leon. I'm the Director of Operations here at iluminr. In today's session, we've chosen for this month for our masterclass the focus of digital risk and supporting organisations to navigate the variety of compliance and regulatory goals or standards they're looking to align to in terms of facing this ever-evolving risk. Most recently, over the last few years, we've seen a massive rise and a continuous evolution in the threat landscape as it relates to digital and cybersecurity, most recently of which unprecedented global outage as a result of the CrowdStrike and Windows situation a little over a month ago. But in parallel to that, on the regulatory front, we've seen a lot of progress being made as it relates to changing the requirements and responsibilities and obligations of organisations, most recently of which in the EU, we've seen the passing of the first AI Act globally, as well as confirmation on enforcement dates for the DORA standard. As these standards tighten and organisations have a goal to achieve a variety of cybersecurity compliance objectives, it's really critical that we look to see how do we strengthen our defences, but also how do we build that capability across our teams. One of the most critical aspects in any response framework or program, be it cybersecurity or otherwise, is that human element. Surprise, surprise. Whilst security measures are essential and we need to continually test and validate and make sure that they're effectively putting up those defenses for those threats that we're concerned about, training and building capability of our staff is definitely key to mitigating any number of risks, not specifically cybersecurity related. This includes comprehensive risk awareness training and engaging scenarios to develop your team's capabilities to respond to these ever-evolving threats. We've seen some examples, or I've spoken already about a couple of the changes in the regulatory space that we've seen evolve recently. But as organizations begin to operate globally or even interact with persons that are from other jurisdictions, whether your organization is servicing those jurisdictions or not, you'll find that your organization might become obliged to comply with these frameworks or standards or regulations, even if you're not directly operating in that jurisdiction specifically. As a result, this creates an overlapping regulatory space that we need to coordinate and navigate our way through. And so one of those fun goals is how do we actually identify what are those commonalities and how do we effectively build up that capability across our teams and our people in the organization. A couple of examples here for our friends in the United States. We've got the NIST cybersecurity framework, which provides a comprehensive approach to managing and reducing your cybersecurity risks in the organization. And to support that, guidelines coming out of places like CISA to help emphasize the importance of protecting your critical infrastructure, your assets, and making sure your teams are capable and ready to go. I'm just going to talk about the EU Cyber Resilience Act for a little bit here, just for a moment, because this is something what I find when we look at regulations, especially in the cyberspace. Everyone knows those lovely four letters GDPR, no matter where you are in the world. What's interesting about the EU is they're usually one of the first jurisdictions to deploy and formally regulate these environments. And then we then see in other jurisdictions, people taking a lead from those comprehensive standards. So for example, the California Consumer Privacy Act. Over here where I'm from, if the accent doesn't give me away, in Australia, we've got things like the regulated CPS 230, which is like an organizational resilience framework, which is leaning heavily off the likes of DORA. How can we approach this and support our teams and give them a very simple way to deal with these situations? Here at iluminr, we've got customers that are not necessarily specifically required to comply with regulations like DORA or CCPA Acts or the EU AI Act. However, they do look to adopt and follow those frameworks internally just to put themselves at the front foot and give themselves that edge to prepare themselves and make sure that if, for whatever chance, they're interacting with customers or partner organizations, or if a new standard comes up in their jurisdiction, that they're already ahead of the curve and looking to be ready to address these situations as they unfold. The job to be done is consistent across no matter what standard or framework you're looking to align to. You need a robust set of response plans or playbooks available. You need to understand your tolerance and thresholds and need to test them against severe but plausible scenarios and be confident in your team's and your organization's capability to respond. Something that we're very passionate about here at iluminr is making sure that we're actually continuously learning and improving. And this is what brings us to microsimulations. For those that haven't experienced iluminr firsthand, what is a microsimulation? A microsimulation is a short, sharp, 20 to 30 minute activity that you can do repeatedly across a single group or audience of stakeholders. That might be looking at a particular team, like your crisis management team or your cyber incident response team, routinely and more frequently throughout the year. This is designed to be done in complement to, say, those large traditional exercise or tabletop activities that you might look to do at least annually. However, there's always challenges with those big activities. They're tough to schedule, a lot of time and effort goes into them, and also trying to get participation for 2, 3, 4 hours more than once a year. If you're able to do that, please reach out to me, let me know how you do that, because I'd love to know how that occurs. However, to ensure that we're continually engaging our teams, making sure they're aware of the ever-evolving threat landscape, but also what are we doing as an organization? What changes have we made to our playbooks or procedures, policies, or processes? Excuse me. In addition, how are we continually testing and validating the components of our program and framework that we've got deployed in place? Microsimulations provides a vehicle where we can continually interact with that program, with that framework, with those procedures more routinely across, again, that same audience. So doing that 3, 4, 6 times a year, but also giving you the ability to scale this and replicate it across other areas of the business that aren't able to participate in those big activities that you might only do once or twice a year with select groups. They're a great way to also demonstrate how we're able to support the needs of our customers and their requirements and their objectives as well. So being a product masterclass, a big focus of today's session is to actually step through an example microsimulation and call out how this could help us address some of those fun, ever-evolving, complex challenges that we see in the regulatory space or in the best practice space as well. For those that haven't seen it, welcome to iluminr. The iluminr microsimulation library gives our clients and organizations that adopt this a ever-growing suite of activities that they can use to continually test and improve and build that capability across their teams and in their organization. Microsimulations are deployed through a feature in iluminr called event rooms. Event rooms is a coherent workspace where a team or multiple teams or stakeholders across an organization can centrally coordinate their response to a disruption or a threat or an incident that they're managing. This includes a series of embedded tools, some collaborative whiteboards where we can track and record all information, as well as access our plans and procedures. Microsimulations will actually support your facilitator or your team and guide them through the specifics of the activity. I mentioned before briefly that microsimulations are designed to be achieved within a 30-minute time window. As a result, we commonly look to be very specific and intentional with the objectives we're looking to achieve. So in today's example, we're looking to validate our organization's stakeholder management strategy and validate our organization's communication protocols for managing an unfolding critical event. We will achieve this within 30 minutes. 20 to 25 minutes will be focused on the microsimulation activity itself. And then we put aside 5 minutes at the end to make sure that we've got time to capture feedback via a iluminr learning loop, which we'll talk about more shortly. Because we've got such a short time window, we need to really put the participants in the seat of the situation as fast as possible. And here's an example of how we do that.
Thousands of organizations worldwide have been hit by a massive ransomware attack last night, with cybersecurity teams still scrambling to contain the intrusion that has since paralyzed servers and shut down entire networks. It is the single biggest global ransomware attack on record, impacting businesses from department stores to software providers, with hacker group Fancy Bear demanding millions in cryptocurrency before they will unlock data. Cybersecurity teams are working through issues with local authorities but do not know how long networks will stay offline.
So here we present them with the scenario that we're being faced with. Very engaging. We commonly, within all microsimulations that we have available and continually adding to, we typically use something like a video asset that could also potentially include a simulated phone call from a key stakeholder, be it internally or externally, to give a little bit more context about the situation. To give us the ability to then really make this real and live and relevant for our teams, we then point them to the iluminr information board. Just going to skip through this for a second. Within the iluminr information board, as I mentioned, this is that part of one of the collaborative tool sets that exists within the platform that allows team members to actively contribute to the situational awareness about the incident as it's unfolding. But in this context of microsimulations, here we can get really specific around what does this global situation or this broader event mean to us and to our people. So in this example, at approximately 8:30 a.m. on Monday morning, folks in our IT security team confirmed that we have been impacted by a cyber attack involving ransomware. Our corporate network, including critical systems, have been disabled, and there's a lot of encryption of key files that's causing that cascade impact across the organization. Our Active Directory and corporate email are currently inaccessible, so it's making it hard to investigate the situation. Our public-facing website's down, and we've got colleagues across the organization reportedly receiving phone calls from major media outlets, customers, and the regulator. Finally, we have received a ransom of approximately 10 million USD in Bitcoin, which is due within 48 hours. So within a matter of 2-3 minutes, we've been able to really clearly identify what we're being faced with, and now we can focus in on what are the tasks we're looking to achieve as part of this micro simulation. To do that, we use the event task board, which in live game day response is where we can keep track of any ad hoc activities that we're coming up with to track through to completion. But again, in the context of a micro simulation, here we can be really specific around what we're looking to get our teams to discuss, confirm, or do as part of our micro simulation. Starting it off, first activity for this particular situation is we want our team to identify the appropriate playbook or response plan to best support our team and organization in responding to this event. Now, depending on where your organization's up to in their journey of building and reviewing and maintaining your cyber or digital risk program, you might have a series of playbooks or response plans available to access them. iluminr does give the ability for us to access traditional documents or use our iluminr playbook capability. iluminr playbooks effectively take the action-oriented components out of any response plan or procedure and bring them to the forefront of your team's purview so they can start actively responding as soon as possible. For example, if we look for cybersecurity threats, here I can see a series of playbooks that I've got available that will support response to a cybersecurity threat. Playbooks can be associated to a specific team, location, and threats that are relevant to you and your organization. So here I've got a couple of CISA-inspired response playbooks that I'm going to look to activate. Once activated, I can access the tasks and activities that we need to do within each individual playbook. For those that live in that response coordination role in a live event, here I can see a full access of all of the things we need to do as the situation is currently unfolding. So for example, under all playbooks, Here I've got all of the activities that live across both of these plans that our team need to do to respond to the situation. However, in my role in operations, maybe I've got the responsibility to communicate more effectively with people. So if I go to my playbook tasks, here I have the ability to see the 8 things that I need to do across either one of these response playbooks. So for example, making sure that we've preserved evidence for law enforcement, we're coordinating and notifying them appropriately, we're continuing to update relevant stakeholders and communicate effectively, report incident updates, and keep everybody appropriately apprised. The next task we might wish to do is actually confirm our communication strategy. So thinking about the variety of standards we talked about in the beginning intro of the session. In this particular micro simulation, we actually want to challenge the team to say, okay, how are we going to, who's going to be the person to make contact? How are we going to make contact? And what information are we likely to look to share, or what information do we need to share with these specific stakeholder groups? Internal staff, media who are knocking at the door, customers that might be impacted or trying to contact us, and from an obligation perspective, what are our regulatory commitments? Do we need to notify the board, and at what point do we engage with law enforcement? Thinking about some of the standards we spoke about before, the NIST cybersecurity framework has a specific call out to incident response reporting and communications, specifically having a map of internal and external stakeholders who are to be notified in incidents, and information that we commonly will need to share that's designed for both internal and external audiences. So as part of this activity, we're actually starting to move those muscles that will support those requirements under that framework. For those that are interested in the DORA Act coming out of the EU, Article 14 specifically relates to communication requirements, so defining and implementing our communication policies and plans. So here we're starting to get our team to think about who are those stakeholder groups? Do we have them predefined? Have we documented them? Or is this going to be a bit of a discovery discussion to help us figure out what those groups are? I've seen both examples in real world use of micro simulations of, okay, we've had a real well-defined map. Let's make sure our team know where to go to access that. Alternatively, if you're on the early stage of building up and implementing your framework, this is a great activity to have a bit of a passionate discussion amongst the different teams in your organization to say, who are the key people in these stakeholder groups? And let's use this opportunity to update and build that stakeholder map. Lastly, thinking about this is identify and document which other stakeholders need to be informed about the situation, the timeline of when we're going to communicate this information, and what we're going to be sharing with them. Also determine who's going to be that primary point of contact within our team to engage with these stakeholders. Anyone who's been actively involved in communication style responses or that communications role in a live response understands there's that there's a real importance for that continuous contact or a continuous source of truth on both ends of the communication. So one of the benefits to this sort of activity is we're actually starting to educate out and build that capability across a variety of teams in our organization, not just the comms and PR folks within our organization, but there could be an element within any response team, whether that's your senior crisis management team or a specialized cyber incident response team. Who is that comms person, or who is that role holder who's going to be our main point of contact, both to internal and external teams as we move forward? Once we've completed the activity, and again, we're doing this in a sort of an abridged format, but you can imagine, put yourself in a room with 6, 8, 7 of your key leaders and start have them thinking about these discussion points. You can roll over time very, very quickly. Again, this is why we're very intentional at keeping the tasks and activities we're looking teams to do in micro simulations to maybe 3, at most 4, depending on the nature of the discussion point, the task we're looking for them to achieve. Once we've completed that activity, we then direct people to what we call a micro simulation learning loop. With any engagement step we do feel it's very important to make sure that we're closing that loop, hence the name learning loops, to make sure we're actually validating, have we met the objectives we set out to achieve? And what are some additional learnings or things that we've identified that we now wish to capture, record, and actually carry forward either into our next activity, but actually continually build on that program's ability to respond to these ever-evolving threats. So, for example, did we find this micro-simulation actually increased our confidence in engaging and managing stakeholders? So, yep, I've been able to go through and validate my stakeholder map. We know very clearly who are the key persons within our team and the key persons outside the team we need to validate. Have we confirmed our communication protocols? So have we been able to identify what are our comm strategies and plans? Are our playbooks fit for purpose? Do we need to build new playbooks? Did you identify any gaps? Common one that I commonly come across is the stakeholder map needs to be reviewed and updated with new partner and regulator contacts. And then actually making sure we're defining ownership for who's actually going to carry out or make sure we address those gaps or learnings that we've identified. So Leon will coordinate stakeholder map update. And did we find that this was useful in building our resilience? Something I would like to point out as it relates to microsimulations in general. When an organization adopts iluminr and gets access to our microsimulation library, the majority of the work is already done for you within these activities. So microsimulations are built into what we call learning tracks that are designed for specific audiences. So activities designed for that top management board level strategic audience, that operational senior management or specialist role like our cyber incident response teams or communication teams or business recovery teams, as well as then tactical ones that are a bit more all staff focused or frontline staff focused. I did mention before that when we step through the microsimulation, the information board is where we can be very specific and contextually relevant to the teams as it relates to this scenario. You have the ability to name impacted systems, identify key persons to make it incredibly relevant and as live and realistic as possible for your teams. Likewise, the questions that we saw in that learning loop, you can also personalize to make sure that the objectives that we're looking to achieve and the information you're looking to pull out of this microsimulation is relevant and it is going to support the evolution of your response or digital risk program. I hope you found that a little bit illuminating, forgive the pun. At iluminr, we're all about breeding awareness and helping you and your teams build capability as it relates to digital risks and resilience as a whole. To give you a little bit of more assistance, we do have some resources available to help you and your teams continue on your journey of aligning to different cybersecurity frameworks or complying as required. You'll see a QR code on your screen. If you'd like to have a look at the iluminr microsimulation library and check out the catalogue of growing activities that are available, both current and coming very soon, please feel free to scan that QR code and have a look at how you could start planning your microsimulation roadmap. In particular though, if what I've stepped through was of interest or you'd like to see what other options are available, please scan this second QR code that's on your screen now, where you can actually book in a facilitated microsimulation with myself or one of the iluminr team. Here we would actually configure an initial microsimulation and actually step you and your team through the activity, provide any of the learnings and outcomes that we identify, but also give you that real lived experience about what it's like to actually start deploying this new way of doing things across your organization.